Hey, you the mayor.
Thank you for joining us for our
Not Law and Crime too. They be having some good videos on here.
Live coverage here on Law and Crime of the Sean Diddy Combs criminal sex crimes trial. A lot going on today in court. We have a great panel of guests. I'm going to introduce them in a minute. We're going to
fuck all that. I just want to know what happened.
be taking your. You had this member of the Los Angeles Police Department saying that there was an Escalade registered to Bad Boy Records that was found near the crime scene, near the scene of the break-in. There was some very interesting cross-examination, too, that we'll get into as well. A lot of discussion about that it looks like the transcript, what personality this guy has. And also,
funny, he's sassy, and look, when I see it, if I were to see an exhibit photo of myself and I looked in a beautiful in this glamorous headshot, I would tell the entire courtroom too that I looked fabulous and stunning, and there was just this eruption of laughter inside the courtroom. And so Deontay Nash definitely at some points during his testimony,
Not them niggas was laughing in the courtroom.
the personality is brought
Bush Camp Boy said, I'm gonna add you. It's a bet, Birdie. Hell yeah, we could definitely run some.
out, but he is
I'll subscribe to you too.
there to talk about a lot of substance too, and that is just about his working relationship with Cassie Ventura as well as even Diddy. He styled both of them. However, he did have kind of a better friendship and relationship with Cassie, and he witnessed a lot according to his time.
Of course, I would have a better relationship and friendship with Cassie too. What the fuck? I want to be friends with Diddy.
Or according to his testimony during his time while he had worked as a stylist with her. And so we're introduced to Deontay Nash around 12 o'clock-ish, right before the lunch break. He was the last witness who was called before we went to lunch. And so he was kind of explaining just how he had started working with Diddy and Cassie. He started off as an intern for Derek Roche, and Derek Roche was actually Diddy's stylist. And when Deontay's on the witness stand, Jesse, he's not even referring to him as Diddy or Sean Combs. He calls him Puff or Puffy. That is what he calls him by, and that's normally the name that he's familiar with. And so we do see that exhibit photo of Deontay Nash. It was a glamour shot of him.
Damn, all that trauma and shit, and they just outside smiling and shit. Like, I wouldn't even know, bro. Like, imagine living that kind of life, bro. Like, that shit is a mindfuck.
And of course, he said that he looked amazing and fabulous, and I'm sure the transcript read just that, but just being inside the courtroom, it
What the fuck is up, Casey?
definitely was kind of a good
Fortnite.
funny highlighted moment, and then it got more serious from there. So he was explaining that he had worked with Diddy and Cassie from 2008 to 2018, so about a 10-year period. Then we get into the 2009 to 28 time frame, which is a long time, but Maureen Comey, who did the questioning under the direct examination, was essentially asking some foundational questions just about how much time Deontay spent with Cassie, and he said he spent pretty much every single day with Cassie. He said he saw Diddy and Cassie together, though, about once a week, but that's still a pretty often time. And then he was asked, what were the names that Diddy referred to Cassie as? So first, Deontay was like, oh, baby girl, Cassie. But then he said that Diddy would also refer to her as the B word. He would call her an SLUT. He would call...
I'm not gonna lie, Cassie fine as fuck. Like, Cassie is fine as fuck. Like, there's like, damn, Diddy, you was on that? Like, you didn't have to be that.
her a hoe, but he said it's the B word that was his favorite word to use in reference to his own girlfriend, that being Cassie. And he said, he being Deontay, said that Diddy would call Cassie an outright hoe, an outright SLUT. And I'm sorry, guys, I know I have to be very careful with just the words that I can say on air, but Deontay explained that when Diddy would call her these names and when he would use these words against her, that Cassie would be sad. She would be depressed about this name calling. Deontay went on to explain that Diddy threatened Cassie a number of times, threatened to release her sex tapes, send those sex tapes to her parents, threatened to beat Cassie's behind, and it drove Cassie essentially crazy. She would cry, she would stay in the house. Deontay explained that Cassie would essentially cocoon up when Diddy would just call her these names, and Diddy threatened not to release her music, something that the government has talked about at length throughout a bunch of...
Yeah, she only got one album with them niggas. He didn't release the music. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be laughing. It's not funny.
Different witness testimony. And around this time frame from 2012, 2013-ish, again, when Deontay was still working with Diddy and Cassie, Deontay explained that Diddy threatened to do something to Cassie's parents. Now, they didn't elaborate what this threat was, but I'm sure once we get back from the lunch break, they'll kind of expand more on just that. But it seems like, from Deontay's point of view, that Diddy threatened Cassie a number of times. Diddy even threatened Cassie and Deontay, that Cassie couldn't go out with Deontay and that she needed to bring her behind home, essentially, and that Cassie again would be referred to as the B word, and that Cassie would have to essentially do whatever Diddy said, whether it was how her appearance looked, whether
that nigga's going to jail, bro. I do not fuck with Diddy, I'm not gonna lie.
her hair was down a certain way, whether it was up a certain way. And so I think as far as just the direct examination goes, yes,
because it's like, bro, like, you don't even have to do all that. You literally don't even have to do all that. For what? You feel me? Like, you can get anybody you want. You feel me? So, I don't know. That shit just weird.
we did have a funny moment at the beginning of testimony, but really just getting into just kind of the weight of the testimony, it seems that Deontay is kind of in essence, kind of giving more credibility to a lot of the other witness testimony, just about how mean and potentially forceful Diddy was against her.
Right, when you're talking about violence, threats, verbal abuse, it's all important for force, fraud, coercion.
Fuck Diddy, all my niggas hate Diddy.
Right, the underlying elements for sex trafficking. It also goes to the larger theme of why Cassie didn't walk away, why she didn't fight back, why didn't she report Sean Combs? It's a big issue in this case. And talking about that power dynamic is something that's already come up in the past few weeks, and obviously something that's being explored with this testimony. There was a lot of testimony this morning regarding Kid Cudi, because Kid Cudi had taken the stand last week, said that he had this relationship with Cassandra Ventura, and then was retaliated against by Sean Combs, that his house was broken into, his...
Yeah, hell yeah, didn't he, what's it called? This nigga Diddy pulled up in his crib and blew up his car. Like, what the fuck? Like, had the FBI like... FBI, open up! Nigga.
Car was torched. And I got to ask you, Elizabeth, based on the testimony today from, I believe, members of Los Angeles Police Department and the fire department, it seems like that might have happened, that his house was broken into.
No, it did happen, bruh. Lock his ass up on me. Like, this shit is not fucking funny, bruh.
That his car was actually firebombed, right? I mean, what were some of the highlights regarding that testimony about whether this in
Yo, Casey, you gotta chill.
fact did happen?
Yeah, well, we heard a lot of evidence this morning, especially with the first witness that was called to the stand, and that was Officer Christopher Ignacio. He does work with the LAPD, and he was just explaining his response to the December 2011. This happened.
I'm sorry, but Casey, you gotta chill. You gotta chill too.
December 22nd of 2011, the response to the break-in at Kid Cudi's home. And so it was just interesting kind of hearing his perspective just from an evidentiary standpoint, from a police perspective. And so
Stylist said, I love the soundboard. Appreciate you, bro. We got that shit back. I'm gonna keep utilizing that bitch.
he says that he was dispatched around 8:20 a.m. that day about a possible suspect kind of staring down near and around the house. And so he responded. And when he responded, what did he see?
All right, let me chill. I'm doing a lot of laughing. This is serious, guys. This is serious.
Notice right off the bat a black Escalade. And it's interesting that that was one of the first things he said when he was talking about his response, because what did we learn just yesterday when Capricorn Clark was on the stand? That Diddy, Ruben, and Capricorn Clark, according to her testimony, traveled down to Kid Cudi's house in what? A black Escalade. And so Officer Ignacio was explaining that he didn't notice the passengers inside the vehicle because there was so much heavy tint on the windows. But what he did notice was a particular license plate. And he said that that license plate number stuck out to him. He remembered that license plate number. He explained that while they had arrived to the house, his partner had jumped over the fence to kind of let him in to the door. So they opened the door. No one was home at the time. But what they did notice was...
Damn, they really blew that shit up. Like, it's all scratched and shit. Like, god damn, bro. Like, damn, Diddy, is it that deep?
Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy. Boy, ain't no way, boy.
Ain't no way.
Boy, ain't no way.
Some unwrapped gifts. And it's interesting because while Kid Cudi was testifying, he said that there were gifts unwrapped in the kitchen area. These were fancy gifts, kind of like Chanel bags and watches, that type of thing. And so then later on, more detectives arrived to this area. But it's interesting, Jesse, because he was explaining that, excuse me, he was explaining that when they had exited the home, they noticed that same exact black Escalade kind of driving back towards the hill.
Bushcamp boy said, who on 100 mil? That'd be nice.
Driving at a slower pace, around 10 to 15 miles per hour. He said around the first time he saw the black Escalade that they were driving off fast, which I think also...
Stella said, what is Kaysen saying? Kaysen said, free Diddy. Does he need jail too? Nah, let me chill.
Goes to verify Capricorn Clark's explanation, or Capricorn Clark's testimony yesterday, where she was explaining how she, Ruben, and Diddy had all spotted Kid Cudi's car. They chased him and then, excuse me, later returned. And so right before the direct examination ended, we see this exhibit photo, and I think that the prosecution kind of did a big like aha moment here, because we see the DMV vehicle registration, and I know you kind of spoiled it anyway, Jesse, but that vehicle was registered to Bad Boy Productions Inc. And it was the exact same license plate that Officer Ignacio had first spotted. And so that was the big moment just from his testimony. Obviously, under the cross-examination, it was really picked apart just as far as his response goes to investigating this break-in. Whether or not that there were dead ends around.
Bushcamp boy said, you have to win the lottery, okay?
The Hollywood Hills neighborhood, and maybe that was an explanation as to why the black Escalade was seen again. And I think, when Brian Steele was doing the cross-examination, he was poking holes where holes needed to have been poked, right? He was asking questions as far as why a BOLO response wasn't put out, why no arrests were made. why nothing was charged beyond just trespassing. It was no burglary charge or no robbery charge, any of that sort. He didn't spot a car chasing another car. And he didn't hear about a kidnapping in this matter, and that there was no property disturbed, even though there was gifts open that Kid Cudi says weren't open when he had left his home. And
no Diddy, no Diddy, no Diddy, no Diddy.
so those were the big highlights for him.
We're almost done with this video. I'm about to, yeah, we're almost done.
His testimony. Then we get into arson investigator Lance Jimenez, and I think Lance Jimenez's testimony was pretty interesting today because he is an arson investigator, and he was really kind of explaining just the ins and outs of investigating this type of firebomb or car bomb, but particularly this Molotov cocktail that was lodged into Kid Cudi's home, according to him. He says that.
And you know what's funny? When that story first came out, niggas was saying that Cudi was lying. Like, people was like, oh, I think Kid Cudi lying, Diddy would never do that, blah, blah, and the third, just for him to actually do that. Like, isn't that crazy?
He observed when he had responded to the call that he had observed this car parked close to the garage, and then he saw this black Porsche 911. He saw that there was a cutout roof inside the Porsche, something that we've all seen from those exhibit photos. And he said that his initial hypothesis was the engine wasn't damaged, the back seats weren't necessarily damaged, the weather was good that day, so this wasn't a natural accident. This wasn't because of the weather or anything like that. He believed, especially after smelling things like gasoline coming from that glass bottle, that he believed this was a Molotov cocktail. And so we see a whole bunch of different exhibits. We see exhibits.
Damn, that's that DTA shit. What the fuck? That shit niggas doing video games. Like, what the fuck?
Of Kid Cudi's front door. We see exhibits of Kid Cudi's driveway with the black Porsche there. It was burned. We see the roof, and Jimenez has said that he believes that that roof was actually cut intentionally. We see the interior of Kid Cudi's Porsche, where you can see a glass bottle, you can see a handkerchief over into the console area, which is kind of like this designery silky cloth material. And he believed that that was kind of the root in the damage as far as what had happened. And so he summed up his conclusion, because we saw a whole bunch of different exhibits too, that I'm sure we'll get into more later on. Doing this a long time, and he said the fingerprints and just the DNA that was collected, essentially the defense thought it was kind of enough for the grounds of a mistrial. Why? Because the government was essentially asking questions as far as whether or not fingerprints were taken inside the car and around the car. But the victim in this case, the victim obviously being Scott Mescudi, aka Kid Cudi, he had someone do fingerprints after the break-in at his home. He submitted these fingerprints over to officials, and officials officially had this fingerprint card. But the thing is he was asked, he being investigator Lance Jimenez, was asked by Mary Slavic while he was questioned under direct, did you find this unusual? Because the fingerprint cards were later destroyed. So he was asked, do you find this unusual? Has evidence ever been destroyed before? Obviously, there was going to be an objection.
They destroyed evidence? What the fuck are these niggas on, bro?
Defense. Obviously, there was going to be a sidebar because the defense did not want.
Cassie said, I only got 2 more years of school until I free Diddy. Nah.
This information to be heard from the jury. So when the jury had to kind of leave the room for a quick break for arguments outside the presence of the jury, they were just really getting into it. And Alexandra Shapiro just got up and went.
Yeah. And I don't feel bad because this nigga was wilding. What the fuck?
Was like, we have the ground, or I believe there's enough grounds for a mistrial, and everyone just kind of was like, okay, what is about to happen? And obviously we know that didn't necessarily happen because another witness was called later on, but it really seemed like the defense was very upset and found this to be extremely prejudicial against their client.
Because it makes the jury believe, the argument is that someone destroyed the fingerprint cards, and that someone was Sean Combs or a member of his team. And I know that the judge even questioned the prosecutor about why you would even ask questions like this, and at the end told the jury to disregard the commentary about the fingerprint cards. I mean, the jury's...
That's important, though. I feel like that's an important part of the investigation. Like, what the fuck happened to those fingerprints?
I mean, it's already out of the bottle. I mean, they already heard it. Well, they're not supposed to consider it, but they're human beings. Okay, Elizabeth, before I let you go, one more question. So we're taking a bunch of questions from YouTube right now. Again, I have an all-star panel that I'm going to bring
involved in this case, and by involved I mean they're taking notes down, they're listening to this testimony. From what I can see of them when I'm sitting inside the gallery, I don't see any heads kind of nodding off, falling asleep, any of that sort. But I'm kind of wondering about the jury myself, whether or not they found this kind of aha moment, the same as us maybe in the press or other members in the gallery, where that big moment where we had seen that defense exhibit about the vehicle registration being to Bad Boy Entertainment or to Bad Boy Incorporated. So as far as I could tell from the jury, they definitely are still very attentive from it, and they're definitely still paying very close attention. I'm probably sure that during that sidebar when the objections were had, they were probably like, what is going on? But for the most part, they're still paying very close attention. Good.
That's what they should be doing. This is going to be a long case, not an easy case for them to sit on. But Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, that nigga is cooked.